Welcome today. Today's webinar, April 22nd, 2015, eBooks, Apps, HTML5, and Interactivity. The subtext of that title is Simple, Inexpensive Tools to Engage Students and Help Them Master the Muddiest Points. And we're going to play on that word muddy in a couple of minutes. You'll see that. Let me welcome our presenters today. So our moderator is Jeanette Schaefer here at the Maricopa Community College's Maricopa Center for Learning and Instruction. Jeanette, what do you do at MCLI there?
Hi, Mike. Thank you. I'm the instructional technologist at the Maricopa Community College District Office, and I work with faculty across our 10 campuses in implementing technology in the classroom.
Good. Thank you for joining us today. I know you've got you'll be working with both Mike and Kelly as fielding questions from the audience, and I'm sure you'll have some of your own too. So thank you, Jeanette, for joining. Mike Cassani from Brookdale Community College. I'm embarrassed to say, I thought I mentioned Brookdale was in Massachusetts. It's actually in New Jersey. Anyhow, thank you for joining us. Mike, you worked on this project with funds from the National Science Foundation. How did that all come about?
Thanks, Mike, and everybody, thanks for joining us today. Really, two things led us to this project. The first was just watching all the students around our campus with their mobile devices, smartphones and tablets, and then in my own classes, seeing the students reluctant to purchase the textbooks, and even when they purchased the textbooks, I was finding that they wouldn't read the week's assignment, even if I was giving a quiz or gave some sort of carrot for them for reading the assignment. So we came up with this idea of building engaging, interactive content that they can have on the mobile devices that they have with them.
That's a good point. And of course, it wasn't that they weren't paying attention to you, Mike. It was just some other problem there, right?
Thank you. Yes, that's true.
Good, thank you. Joining us today is Kelly Parr, also from Brookdale Community College. When did you join the project, Kelly? Right at the inception of the grant, or were you involved before that? How did that work?
Hi, Mike, and welcome everyone. I joined the project officially in November of 2012. While I was not involved as one of the primary writers of the grant, Mike is someone I've collaborated with on campus over the years on several projects, so I was well aware of the project and very interested and excited about it.
Well, good. Thank you. Good. Thanks.
And
pleasure to have all of you with us today. Go ahead. Go ahead with your role, Kelly.
Oh, my role is actually I have a dual role. I'm both an instructional designer and a project administrator. And main work we have done has been to develop 2 complete ebooks with 2 ATE national centers, one in Waco, Texas, in the National Center for Optics and Photonics Education, and the second is the National Center for Supply Chain Technology Education, which is based in Norco, California.
Cool. Well, thanks. It's fun to see these ebooks really coming on and being used by people. We're excited to hear more about that today. I just want to remind everyone that we're inviting those of you who have just joined us, if you like, introduce yourself in the chat window as you see several people doing. I'm the person at the bottom of the page, your host, Mike Lasecki. Let's get started with a poll. So here's an interesting question, folks. What do you do usually during a webinar? Do you check email? Do you text other people? Do you clean your desk? Do you actually watch the webinar? Or do E, all above? So please go to the polling icon. You'll see it up there. Don't use the chat window. Use the polling icon right up at the top of the participants box. Now, you don't have to be embarrassed. No one will actually trace these answers back to you. So please go ahead and check in. I'll give you just another minute to do so, and then we'll see the results of this poll, what people really do during a webinar. So here we go. Let's publish those responses in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So E is the winner, Mike, Kelly, and Jeanette. They do all of the above. I noticed nobody said clean their desk. I wonder why not. Well, anyhow. So there we go. Thank you, folks, for being honest. I see quite a few people actually watch the webinar. So it's fun to do polls like that. We'll have another one as we get going today. Now today, I'd like to turn over, let's see, should I tell you a little bit about the agenda? Yes. The agenda today, we're going to talk about the tools that are used, such as iBooks Author, BookWidgets, Tumult, Hype, and Xcode. We're actually going to be doing demonstrations here. And then as we go a bit further, Kelly and Mike are going to tell us what they've learned, and then we'll talk about the resources that are available from eMate. Let's go ahead and turn over now to Mike Cassani.
Thank you, Mike. So this slide here is sort of the theme for the talk today, which is the idea of these muddiest points. And so we see kids here immersed in mud here, and the idea is that as an experienced instructor, I can look out at a class or I can interact with a class, and I can tell when they're having difficulty with a subject. And if I've taught a class multiple times, I know the exact parts of the class that students are going to struggle with. So knowing that information, rather than focusing on building the interactive content just for an entire course or an entire lesson or module, really focus that interactivity on trying to address these muddiest points and make sure that the students understand these muddiest points.
And the way eMate describes a widget is a digital element that we purposely include in whether it's a complete ebook, a presentation, a module, a lesson, so that users can interact with the content and hopefully heighten their understanding of that content. Think back to when PowerPoint first came out and you could use every animation that existed and every sound, and how annoying it was. We really have tried throughout this project to add interactivity with purpose and to enable users to do, not just read and review as in a traditional textbook. Mike, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think that's good. Let's take a look inside a widget. So I'll pop to the next slide. So what the widget actually contains, if we open it up, and on a Mac you just right click and say show contents or explore contents, and you'll see, if I bring the pointer over here, that it opens up in a folder. And what we have there is we have a bunch of images associated with the widget. We have some HTML content, so cascading style sheets, JavaScript, XML. We have a folder with some cascading style sheet information, another image, a folder with some images, some more JavaScript information, and then the core HTML file, index.html. And so really what we're building here with the widgets is just HTML content, and we're going to leverage that ability to have HTML content later in the presentation.
So Mike, this may scare a few people. Do we need to know all this information in order to be able to create an ebook?
No, in fact you don't. And the tools we're going to show you, some of them will allow someone who's a little bit more advanced to go in and use some coding and write some code. But in general, you don't have to understand any code, whether it's HTML, JavaScript, or even more advanced coding to do any of the things that we're going to show you today.
Excellent. I bet some of our audience are relieved.
Hope so. All right, so here we have just some text from one of my classes. I'm actually did this lecture last week. And if you look at this content here, this is what we think of a traditional textbook content. And what I'd like you to think about is how difficult it would be to sort of read this, interact with this, and then have students understand this. And then later on when we talk about some of the tools, I'm going to show you an example of how we can move away from some of this.
And what we're going to show you today is just a glimpse. We're just scratching the surface of what's possible. We're going to show you a variety of widgets that you can develop, and also some tools that you can use to develop those widgets. And don't think that just because we have developed ebooks with this project that you can only use these interactive learning objects in an ebook. It can be a lesson, a module, just one simple activity. I just want to show you what's possible and get you excited about what's possible. We're going to take you through a progression of widget development tools, starting from easiest and going all the way up to the difficulty level of pretty easy. So again, to touch back on what Jeanette said, don't be intimidated by anything we're going to show you today. We also understand and also live in academia and get that no one has a great budget for software. So what we're showing you today, everything is also either free or relatively inexpensive. First tool we're going to show you is iBooks Author. The second tool is BookWidgets, and I will go into each of these in more detail later. And the third is Tumult Hype, which is topping out the scale at pretty easy. So iBooks Author is a free download, the Apple Store. It is Mac only in terms of development, and it does have to be a newer Mac. Operating system OS X 10.9 or later. It does come with 8 built-in options to develop widgets, and the one thing is the widgets developed in iBooks Author are usable in iBooks Author only. You can't export them to use in a different tool. We'll talk more about that later as well. This is a look at the iBooks Author interface. I'm not going to do a demo of the interface. We're going to focus on the widgets, but I wanted to see you what it let you see what it looks like. It's very intuitive. Typical of Apple, has a lot of drag and drop functionality. It's very easy to bring in text from Word, PDF, or even from InDesign. And if you look at up at number 1 here, this is a blow up of what's here. This is a really important drop down. It's widgets. It's how you get to the area in iBooks Author where you can add the interactive objects to whether this turns out to be a 1-page, 3-page, or full-blown book. The 8 widgets that are standard in iBooks Author, I'm going to walk you through, and then you'll notice number 9 is a bigger number in green, and I'll explain why when we get there. Number 1 is the gallery widget, and what that is nice for is you can have a sequence of images that someone can touch and scroll through. It could be a process, a sequence. Number 2 is the review widget. This is a nice little assessment you can put right into the book to see if students are understanding the content, getting what you need them to get from the lesson. Widget number 3 is the interactive image. This widget allows you to pull in an image and then choose what you would like to highlight and label, and when the student interacts with this through touching, you can zoom in on different aspects of a photo. We have a demo where we've done this with the parts of an oscilloscope. Number 4, the scrolling sidebar, is a nice way if you have limited real estate on a page. You can tap on that and add more text and even put a picture in it, and you'll see this gray scroll bar that would, in the widget itself, you can scroll up and down to see more of that text. Number 5 is media. This is a widget you would insert to drop in a movie right into the book. 6 is Keynote. This is how you would add a Keynote or a PowerPoint presentation to the book. Keynote allows you to open PowerPoint and save it as Keynote, and then you can subsequently put it in iBooks Author. And even if you have a presentation that includes a video within the presentation, it still plays within the presentation, within the widget, which is pretty cool. Number 7 is 3D, and again, don't think that you have to create the 3D images yourself and then put them in. There are free resources such as Google SketchUp where you can obtain 3D images and then put them in the book so your students can interact with a 3D object. Think of the things that you'd love to bring into the classroom but they're just physically too big to do so, or you wish you could show other aspects of them. This is the way you can do that. Number 8 is the popover. This is nice. Again, helps you cut down on real estate and make things more engaging. You can have an image where a student taps on the image and then a description pops up. And you can control what's in that description. And number 9, HTML, when you look at this, it appears as if it's the most boring widget. It's actually the most exciting because it gives you options and flexibility. The HTML widget allows you to put widgets in an iBooks author book that can be accessible in other cross-platform devices as well. And we'll talk more about that later.
So Kelly, what's your favorite widget?
Well, my favorite widget isn't actually one of the iBooks author widgets, clearly HTML, because that's essentially the key to the kingdom. You can do anything with that. So of all of these, that one is my favorite.
Excellent. Sounds exciting.
Okay. In terms of pros and cons, iBooks Author is free, which is always a pro. The widgets that are included are very easy to use. Again, the HTML widget gives you the flexibility to add widgets that you've created in other third-party development tools, and we're going to show you a few of those soon. You can easily import text from Word, InDesign, a PDF, which is, saves you a lot of time. One potential con is that you do need a Mac for development, and it has to be a newer Mac. The widgets developed in here, other than those that you bring in with HTML, cannot be exported for use with other platforms. And you can't export the complete finished book to other platforms like InDesign. What we're finding is that iBooks Author seems to be the go-to application. Rather than iBooks Author developing export options to other programs, we're finding that InDesign has developed a way to get from InDesign to iBooks Author. The product's just that good. Okay, next tool we're going to talk about is BookWidgets. Again, pretty affordable, $49 a year education pricing. And what's really nice about it is you can develop on a Mac, a PC, an iPad, a Chromebook, or even Android devices. And this is a product that is evolving and getting more and more accessible. In terms of available widgets, they currently have 36 options, and they welcome input and requests, and so this is growing weekly, I would say. The HTML widgets created are easily added to iBooks Author, which you're going to see in a video shortly. And they can also be standalone activities through an app on an iPad or another tablet. Easy to add to the web, and you can also set up these widgets so that you can email results, comments, etc. to the teacher, which is a very nice, powerful option to have.
Kelly, do you have any idea if these widgets can be put into the learning management systems like Canvas or Blackboard?
Well, since the output is HTML, yes, you can,
okay,
because it's web-based.
Okay, I figured that. Thank you.
You're welcome. This is a quick look at the BookWidgets interface, and I want to point two things out. Number one, if you look at the top, the text is a little tough to read. It says tutorials. BookWidgets has phenomenal tutorials. So I encourage you after the webinar, when you have some time, just go do some exploring because it's pretty exciting to see what you can do. The other thing I'd like to point out is number two, request a widget. If you don't see what you're looking for here in the options, send them an email, and if it's something that they feel other users could benefit from, they'll develop it. They're in Belgium, but they're phenomenal. They're unbelievably responsive, and they've actually modified one of their widgets to meet the needs of our project, which I could talk about later as well. Okay. And when you click on, if you remember number 1 on the last slide for tutorials, you can see, if you look at number 1, for example, this would be the way to access the flashcards widget tutorials, and then what pops up after you click where number 1 is number 2. They have a walkthrough and how you configure it. They have a lot of, for all of their widgets, you can upload an example, so if you're not quite sure how to get started, they start it for you if you so choose. And this first video, if you're on a Mac, it may not start automatically, so in the chat box in the lower left corner, there will be a link that you can click to launch this video. And the first video is a tour of BookWidgets. Interactivity chart and see the impact of the data they enter. To clear it, you hit the trash can. You can start over. Another nice feature of BookWidgets is that for every widget it offers, you can view an example of how it was created. It's a behind-the-scenes look at how they built the widget, which is really helpful when you go to build your own. Okay, so that was just a quick glimpse at some of what's available with the currently existing 36 widget options. And again, just because they call it a frame sequence, you don't have to use it the way it's used in the example. Again, this is just a, we're hoping that this will spark some ideas and creativity today. The next video I'm going to show you shows you how to build a BookWidgets frame sequence widget, which is the one you saw that had the timeline that could be an image gallery and so forth. So we'll take a look at that next. Okay, so you've seen how easy it is to create an interactive widget using BookWidgets. So now, how do we get it into iBooks Author? The next video will show you that. So think back to that big green number 9, the HTML widget. That's how we're going to do it. So again, a little bit more involved than using the iBooks Author widgets, but still pretty easy. Pros to BookWidgets, it's relatively inexpensive at $49. Multi-platform, which is a huge plus, I believe, and it's evolving. The developers welcome input and suggestions. For example, when we were working on our book for Introduction to the Automated Warehouse for the National Center for Supply Chain Technology Education, a lot of the images were more portrait in orientation, taller, and we initially started out using the gallery image in iBooks Author and found that it had limited flexibility with image masking or cropping. So all of our taller images were being cut off. So we contacted BookWidgets, which had the advantage of being HTML, so that it would be, the widget we created would be accessible outside of iBooks Author. And they modified their existing widget to contain entire picture constraint proportions, which you just saw in that one video, which was really nice. They said, hey, you're not the only one who's having that issue. I'm sure other users will experience that as well. You can also create and add your own custom cover images. What I mean by that is the BookWidgets frame sequence widget, for example, had those purple horses. What we did in our automated warehouse ebook is we have some graphic design students from our campus working on the project, and we had one of them develop a series of icons for our cover images that are all blue, round, and matched, so it's a nicer uniform branding and look for our book. And that's simple. It's just selecting which image is your cover image. Again, very responsive tech support, and great tutorials and loadable examples. In terms of cons, as much as there is a lot of flexibility, you can't change some things such as fonts. And something that Mike has pointed out from time to time is some of their widgets seem more appropriate for K-12 than for higher ed. Mike, would you like to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Kelly. I would also say that because the widgets are constrained by what type of widget it is, if what you hope to do or plan to do doesn't really fit within a particular widget type. So somebody texted or chatted, is there a mind map widget? And there is a mind map widget, so then there's a way to build a mind map and have your students interact and actually add to or build their own mind map. But if that widget didn't exist, then there would be no way within BookWidgets to do that. So you're still, even though you have a lot of options with 36 widgets and growing, you're still somewhat constrained by what their widget platform does. But what we'll talk about next will address some of that. And I think we'll pass it off now to Mike for another poll.
Thanks, everyone. So now, at this point, do you agree that BookWidgets is an easy tool you could use to engage students? So for what you've seen, simple thing, yes or no, go up into the box and click yes or no. It's not a hard question. I'll just give you a second to do it. Okay, we've got a bunch of answers pouring into the thing. I'll count down from 5, and then we'll see what this looks like. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You convinced most everyone, Mike and Kelly and Jeanette, so the majority of people say yes. So I think you made a good case for it. Why don't you go ahead?
So Jeanette, we'll take a break here, so if you want to see if there are any questions from the chat that you've been monitoring.
Yes, Mike, you've done an excellent job of answering most of them, but there was a question in the beginning. Is a widget like a small-scale app? Mike, are you able to answer that one?
Yes,
okay.
it is. Yeah, I had to click my talk button. I keep forgetting. Yes, it actually, they originated in Apple's dashboard, so they were called dashboard widgets. So it is actually like a tiny little app with app functionality. And if you remember, when the iPhone first came out, there was no software development kit to build apps for the iPhone, and so Apple's solution was to build web apps, which is exactly what these are. And so the first generation of applications for the iPhone that were third-party applications were actually web apps. And so yes, exactly what you're talking about here.
Perfect. And then Kelly, you addressed this a little bit. Is there anything else you can address as far as are widgets accessible?
In terms of like having a student submit it as an assignment?
I'm thinking accessibility is probably what they were asking.
Oh, okay. So you're talking having things read aloud. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Accessibility? Okay. Again, throughout iBooks Author, when you add anything in, they have a lot of accessibility built in. You can have alternate text and so forth. In terms of, automatic captioning and so forth, for example, BookWidgets doesn't have anything built in yet, so you really do need to be mindful of that on your own and look for ways to do that yourself.
Okay, and then I'm sure BookWidgets, you can always submit a request through their ideas for other widgets?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
You're
And then
welcome.
I had a question too. As you were talking about the widgets, are there any widgets that are collaborative in nature where multiple users of an iBook can contribute information and then you can actually see either a summary of the information or what other users are contributing?
I mean, ebooks are pretty personal, just as a device is personal. So it would be highly unlikely that, say, 5 students would be using one iPad with an ebook and tap on the same widget. It would take the input from one user. However, you can get around that by having the teacher have them, say, do a poll or share results of things. For example, you can have a widget created in BookWidgets sent to the teacher by email, and then the teacher could subsequently look at it through that lens. So it is doable.
Okay, so there is a way to share the information. It's just not kind of real-time collaborative.
It's not exactly. I wouldn't equate it to the polls that Mike has been leading today. It's not 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom. It's not like a clicker environment.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that's all the questions I have right now. So back to you, Mike and Kelly.
Okay, I'm going to take over here. And here we're going to talk about Tumult Hype. And so Tumult Hype is another third-party tool that tries to address some of the weaknesses both in iBooks Author and also some of the limitations of even something like BookWidgets. So this, on the spectrum of ease of use, is pretty easy. But again, yes, Brian, no coding required here. So there's an educational discount, and you can get 1 to 4 license. The latest version is Hype 3, so that's only a couple weeks old. So the standard version is about $30, and the professional version is $60. Again, Mac only, but then anything that you create in Hype can be exported, and it can be used in an LMS. It can be used desktops, laptops, smartphones, iPads, other tablets, really anywhere you want to use the content. In terms of the widgets, really what you build is limited by your own skill and your imagination, and you do have a standard export to use an iBooks Author, so a .wdgt file, just like Kelly showed earlier. You can also export from the professional version as an OAM file that you can actually drop an exported widget into InDesign. So now you could start building something in InDesign. And in terms of going cross-platform, that's one direction that people can move. And again, it's not just widgets with that exporting to HTML and exporting to a folder. So I'm going to switch over to my desktop now. So unlike Kelly, I'm flying without a net here. So I'm going to switch over to my desktop and just do a quick demo for you. And let this load here. And hopefully everyone can see that. This is the interface for Tumult Hype. And again, this is version 3, and this is the professional version. And the paradigm here is scenes. So in this left-hand column over here, I have different scenes. And so I have my main scene, which I've labeled as menu. And then each one of these is additional scenes. I click on that one, and you'll see that that scene just consists of a video that's dropped in here and then a button called menu. And so not a whole lot to this particular project, but you can see that I have a total of 10 scenes, counting the menu scene, the first scene. And what the purpose of this one was, this is a module on laser safety, and we had a series of short videos that we wanted to share in the textbook that talked about laser safety, but we didn't want someone to have to just have all this text flowing with just video after video after video. So we took those videos and we built this interactive widget. And so the way this widget works is you have this screen here, and these buttons, the buttons are just elements here, so you can drop down here from this list of elements and you can pick a button or a textured button and just drop them in there. You can add text boxes. You can add images over here. So Optech and NSF are just images that are dropped in, and you can build the scene using the internal tools here. And you'll notice over here we have an inspector. On a Mac, we refer to inspector. So inspector is, we have a document inspector, so that's the document settings essentially. We have a scene inspector where we can adjust the settings for scenes. We have a metric inspector, so for any particular object, so position and size, for example. We have a element inspector, so that's where you can adjust the color of objects. We have a text inspector. We have a actions inspector, so we're going to come back to that in a second. A new one in the Pro version now, the professional version of Hype 3, is something called a physics inspector. So I'll show you that in a second. But obviously this scene, there's no physics, so we don't have any physics on that. And then finally, we have identity. And again, you notice here there was a question about accessibility. So we can actually build in the accessibility here by adding some notes here, some alternate text for some of our interactions and some of our objects. So this particular scene, the way this works, or this particular Hype project, each of these buttons, if I click on it, you'll notice it's set to normal. You can have it show as hover or pressed. And then I've selected over here the Actions Inspector, and you'll notice that I can adjust what my pointer looks like. And then I can, based on how I interact with the button, so you have on mouse click, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse over, mouse out, on drag, what action you take. And so the actions, the simplest one is just jump to scene, but you also can run JavaScript. You can trigger a behavior. All right. You can trigger a behavior, or you can go to URL. You can even compose an email, play a sound. All right. Kelly's telling me that she can't hear me. Is anybody else having trouble hearing me? I sound okay. All right. So just as an example here, this wrist to the eye, this button, then the action is jump to scene, and then from this pull-down menu here, you have the whole list of scenes available, and you can just select. You can select next scene or previous scene or first or last scene, but because we have the scenes labeled, we can just pick the correct scene. So wrist to eye is the correct scene that we want there. We can pick a transition, how that's going to happen, and then we can pick a duration, how long that's going to take. So that's really how we do this. And if I switch to that scene, this one basically is built by just dropping the video here and then putting in another button over here, labeling it menu, and then on mouse click here, jump to scene, and the scene now is just menu. And we could even do first scene, and that would work as well. And then in this case, we're doing instant instead of a crossfade. So very simple to build. It's just a matter of building scenes. And actually, this scene here, once you build this second scene, you can then duplicate this one. So you right-click here and duplicate scene. And then we can take that scene now and drop another video or change the video. But just a quick preview, if I click on the little browser icon there, you see it takes me to Safari where I can preview it. And you can see if I click on wrist to eye, I see the video load. The video will play. Okay, now pause that, and then I hit menu. So again, very simple. We've used it in an ebook, but there's no reason why this couldn't be dropped into a learning management system or used with some other type of content. Now, that is hype, and let me show you here. I want to show you one that has animation. So this is, do you remember I showed you the full page of text that we referred to as a muddy point earlier? So that was a lecture on cost of service. So cost of service, and I'll go ahead here and hit this button over here, which is loop. And if I just hit play right in the browser, you'll see down here I have a bunch of animations. So I have a bunch of objects here. So if you look at this object, that's basically how that object animates. So packet A, and then you'll see I not only have the motion, but if I bring my animation panel up a little bit so we can see better. All right, so there you see all the objects there. But I also have opacity, so I can make an object disappear or appear by just changing whether it's transparent or not. All right, so let's take that down a little bit. And if I play that, you'll see what I explained to students is with cost of service, what we're doing is the router is tagging the packets, tagging the data as it comes in. So if it's voice data, it's moving it into this bucket here. If it's video data here, and then if it's just standard data like email or web browsing, it's going to put it here. And then the router gives priority to voice and video traffic because that traffic can't stand any latency or delay in transmission. So instead of just using that text that we had earlier, I run this for my class on the projector, show them this in a browser. And again, if you look at it in a browser, it just works like that in a browser. So again, you can embed this in an LMS, you can show it on a browser, you can give it to students on a flash drive if you want to distribute it like that. So all different sort of ways to do that, and if you refresh here, it just shows it again and again. All right. So that's just a very simple animation, and you can see that animation is very powerful. It takes a concept, that cost of service. Well, what did all that text try to say? And now in just a very simple animation, I can explain that. Let me switch to a blank one here, just quickly do a demo here. I see we're running out of time here, so I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit and hopefully not lose anything. I'm going to just drop a rectangle into here. And I'm going to go under, this is the element inspector. I'm going to just change this to a color we can see better. That's blue. And the way the animations work, someone asked about coding before. The way the animations work is I click this record button. I drag my timeline to the next keyframe. So we have keyframes here, and say in 3 seconds I want this object. So I'm going to just physically drag the object over here, and that's going to be where it goes in 3 seconds. I drag my keyframe now 2 seconds. I'm going to drag it down. And then in this spot, I also want it to shrink a little bit, so I'm going to make it smaller. And then one more keyframe here. We'll go out to 8 seconds, say. Drag it back to the left. And now you see the opacity over here in my element inspector. I'm going to drag this at this point. That's going to go to 0. All right, so basically it becomes invisible. So now when I play this, you're going to see the object starts to disappear and starts to get smaller as it moves. And notice I just picked the keyframes and it interpolates all of that in between there. It figures out where to start making it smaller, where to start making it go invisible. So it doesn't just go invisible at the end. It transitions to invisible. And that opacity, let me pause this. For example, if we don't want it to go invisible quite that late, we can drag the timeline here for opacity. So the opacity doesn't start till, for example, this keyframe here. So now if I play it, that's where it starts to go invisible. So we can really control it. It's very powerful. All right. So, and again, I'm not going to preview it in the browser, but you can also see that in the browser. The one last type example I wanted to show you, and I'm talking a little bit faster than I would like here, so I apologize. is something called Castle. So this is a demo using the gravity functionality in Hype Professional, which is the professional version of Hype 3, the latest version. And you don't really see this functionality show up in Hype. You have to view it in the browser. But if I click on an object here, all right, you'll see that, for example, this cannonball here is dynamic full physics body. And now if I just preview it in the browser, oops, right, we should see the cannonball shoots, and it, bring that up a little bit, so could be level 1 of a game, but the cannonball shoots, and because it's denser than the blocks in the castle falls down and falls apart. Very powerful. And again, no coding involved here, just going in and applying physics to the existing objects. All right, so let's switch back momentarily to our presentation so I can talk about the pros and cons here. Right, so that was the Tumult Hype demo, and again, I think you'll see that on the scale it's harder to use than iBooks Author and than BookWidgets, but very powerful in what you can do. And now with the physics added, I mean, that's amazing. So I did some examples where you take a set of tennis balls and drop them and just have them bounce on a surface. Lots of possibilities there. Again, very inexpensive, very affordable, limitless possibilities. Can export to iBooks Author, can export from the Pro version to InDesign, and as you can see, it's not just widgets. You can build web-based learning objects, and again, multiple platforms. So basically any platform with a web browser. So any tablet or smartphone now has a web browser, so this will work on that. Again, the cons, I would say steeper learning curve than the other tools, and then probably the Mac only for creation. So this is only a tool that exists on the Mac. There is no Windows analog
even though you can
tool. Kelly, anything you want to add to that?
Only create on a Mac, I think it's still very powerful because what you create can be viewed on multiple platforms. So I think, I mean, even though it's Mac-only development, it's still very accessible.
All right, in the time that we have left now, I'm just going to switch over now and I'm going to talk about Xcode. So Xcode we didn't mention too much early on, but Xcode is Apple's software development kit. And we're going to show you how you can take an Xcode project and convert it into an application. So any of these HTML widgets that we've built, you can use Xcode and actually build an iPad or an iPhone app from it. Again, the cost is free from the Mac App Store. Works on modern Macs with a modern operating system. You do have to, if you're going to submit it to the App Store, you have to register as a developer and go through that process. So let's switch back over to desktop sharing. And let me switch to Xcode here. And I saw a question being asked. Any questions I can answer while I'm doing this? Okay. All right, so this is Xcode. I've got my project built here, but let me just quickly, and again, I know we're close to the time limit here, so Mike, feel free to chime in, but I'm going to show you parts of it and then show you the finished product. So from Xcode, we start and we create a new project. So it's an Xcode project. Xcode is their development environment, and we're going to just use a single view application. So I hit Next here and give it a name. So this is going to be, I'll call it webinar-test. You have to give it an organization identifier here. So that actually, once it becomes an app, that would be tied to that app. We'll go ahead and hit Next here. And then we just give it a location. So I'm just going to save it. I have a default folder for Xcode stuff that I'm saving. So it builds that. Right? And now we've created it, and what you're going to see is all of the coding is over here. And really, the two files that we have to change are going to be this viewcontroller.h and viewcontroller.m. And I can show you here the text that I'm adding, and we can share this with anybody who's interested. But basically, viewcontroller.h, I'm just taking this text here, so I can copy that here, and I'm pasting it right over here like that. And all that does is creates what's called an outlet. So basically, I'm creating a web view, and then I need an outlet for that web view. Where does the content go? The viewcontroller.m, this is the default file, and then what I need to do is, before this closed curly bracket over here, I need to add my content. And the content, so this one will stay the same for any project you build. This one, I take this text over here, let's get it correct here, copy that, and we've been working with some veterans, so we say copy that a lot now because that's how they talk, over, Roger, and copy that. I paste that into there, and now you'll see that that shows up. Now the only thing that changes here is whatever I call my project. So the project doesn't exist yet, so what I need to do, under supporting files here, I'm going to just bring up my Finder window. And when I exported my project, I exported it, that laser safety video I showed you, I exported as HTML. So it creates an HTML file and then puts all of the related resources, the videos, the JavaScript, and images in a folder. And what we do is just select them both here, just drag and drop it into this supporting files folder. And then it asks the question, copy items if needed, and we'll make sure that's checked. We click Finish, and those will all show up over here. So that folder of resources along with the HTML file. And so in this viewcontroller.m, there'll be this name here, the name of the HTML file. So if it's index.html, it should match. In my case, it's hype laser safety videos.html, so that has to match. Right? That's really, paste those two blocks of text in and just make sure that in this file, this name matches the name that you have here for your HTML file. Now we go to our storyboard, and this is where it starts to get fun. This is actually storyboarding the app. So it's on an iPad here, and this icon over here on the right-hand column is the object library. So you see here I have table view, tab bar, so all the different things that show up in an app. But if I scroll down to the bottom, you see sliders here, progress view, all the different types of things I can add. What I want is web view. So I'm going to scroll down until I see it, and of course it's going to be near the bottom here. And we actually just drag and drop the web view right onto there and just position it so it's right in the center. So basically our web view is there. And if we go back to my storyboard over here, this icon over here shows me the contents of my storyboard. And what I need to do is click on View Controller here, and the last thing I need to do is this web view, I want to link it to this. So basically the web view is in my files that I edited, the text that I pasted, and I option and then click and drag. See, the option turns that into a plus, and I click and drag, and that's linking the web view to this UI web view on my device, like that. And once I've done that, if I click, let's go ahead, I'm going to change my target device to, let's make it an iPad 2. And if I click play, the play button is build and run in the simulator. So if I do that, all right, oh, I still have the simulator running, but let's go ahead and open that. So this is on an iPad Air, so let's close it so you can see it running. I left that running just in case we had a problem. But build succeeded, and I open the simulator, and you'll see now it launches my app. I called it Webinar Test, and you'll see the splash screen there for a second, and there is my app on an iPad. And so I click on the button here, launches that first video. I can play it over here. All right. And the menu button works. So something that I built in Hype. So you saw how simple it was to build in Hype, and then now, you know, we had the timer was on me, so we had about 7 minutes. I built that whole thing as an iPad app in less than 7 minutes. All right, so I think we'll take that opportunity then. You know, as George Costanza says, always leave on a high note. All right, so we'll switch back over. So let me switch back over to our...
Now, Mike, do you have directions or step-by-step instructions for that?
Yes, we do, and we'll also we're recording a video of that. So Kelly is much better about recording her videos than I am, but we're in the process of recording videos for all of the demos as well, and those will be available on our website. So instructions, we also will provide as part of the instructions. If you're familiar with lynda.com, if you get the higher level subscription, you actually get the assets that are used in the videos and the demos. So we actually will provide the assets. So if you want to follow along the video and what we're doing, you can also download the assets and follow through.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, so we're back in here. So Kelly, you want to wrap it up with what we've learned?
Sure. One thing that's really important is to have a plan, make a map. It doesn't have to be anything real fancy, formal, or official. It can be Post-its stuck on the wall of your cubicle or office. But just start to think about what it is you want to do, what story you want to tell, and the order in which you're going to tell it. And it's really important to get your assets and information organized. Think back to the BookWidgets video where we were building the frame sequence widget. If you notice, I had a Word document with the text all there and a folder with the images organized. The more you have that stuff ready to go in buckets that you can just go down like an assembly line, it'll just be faster, easier, and a lot more fun. One thing to mention about iBooks Author is it has some fantastic templates included, but as much as it has flexibility, the one thing you cannot currently change is the template. So if you're going to develop a book or even something that's multiple pages, play around with the templates and make sure that the one you choose meets all of your needs for various elements in the ebook, because there is no U-turn, there's no going back. And I think most important is to, when you do add interactivity through a widget, do it with purpose. Do it to clarify a muddiest point based on your experience as a faculty member in the classroom, knowing what students always have difficulty grasping. And in terms of resources, we do have a project website. It's e-mate-bcc.org. It is evolving. We, like BookWidgets, welcome input, questions. Hope you'll visit it and check back again. And the resources can be found if you look at number 2 here. Let me see. This portion of our website has framework resources. You can learn more about the development tools that we showed today, the links to them, how to get started with a project, some iBooks Author resources, some more information about widgets, and some more lessons that we've learned along the way. Okay. And again, we really just scratched the surface today. I hope you're excited about what you've seen and about the possibilities. And it's been a great project to work on because it's evolving. In fact, Mike likes to point out that when he submitted the proposal for the eMate project, iBooks Author didn't even exist yet. So this is a rapidly changing and evolving. It's a fantastic area of education right now. Mike, would you like to add anything?
I think I would just add that, again, we've seen some very powerful tools, but also fairly inexpensive, in some cases free. So we'd love to see what you can do with some of these tools, and we'd love to provide support to you if you'd like to explore some of these tools and see what you can do with them. So again, you can see even with the physics there that we did, the limit is really your imagination. And I'll pass it off to Jeanette now for questions.
Yes, we didn't have any other questions come up, but I think kind of the biggest question in everyone's mind is how can we do ebook development on PCs? Are there any tools similar to these tools? It seems like right now Mac's kind of the go-to for easy ebook development.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment. I think InDesign probably is going to be your best bet in some of the Adobe suite of products, and because you can export the widgets from Hype, for example, you can export them into a format that you can bring into InDesign. You may be able to bring some of that interactivity into InDesign and then export that to a variety of formats that your users can use. Unfortunately, in terms of interactive ebooks, there is a format for the Kindle Fire, but it's a very clunky format, doesn't work well. So Apple has taken the lead on this, and in terms of interactivity in the ebooks, nobody has really caught up yet. Can the book widgets be used in InDesign? Yes, you can. There is a workaround where you can bring the book widgets into Hype and then build that into Hype, and then you can export that as a OAM file and use it in InDesign. So we're actually in the process of exploring all of that now and documenting that, and so as we learn best practices and how to do all of that, that will be shared on our website and at our conference presentations.
Okay, and then I think Kelly just answered the question. Everyone's curious to see an ebook, I guess to be able to open it up and play with it and see how it works from the user or student side. Do you have any readily available that they can look? I know you can just go into iBooks and get some produced by other folks.
I think Kelly's going to try to share her screen, and she has some. I think the OpTech book is a good example, and so she can share what that looks like in some of the interactive activity there. We have used, Nancy asked the question about Captivate 8. We have used Captivate 8 to build some of the interactive widgets, but we haven't looked at Captivate 8 as building an entire ebook. So again, I think with some of the branching capabilities and some of the interactive capabilities in Captivate 8, it does have some really unique features that would be powerful in an ebook format. So Kelly has the book open now, so I'll let her. You want to share your desktop? Okay, and I'll tap dance over here. And I know we're running over, but thank you for your patience.
Mike, do you know what the cost of Captivate 8 is in comparison to the tools that you shared? Because the tools you shared are fairly free. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, this is a page spread from the Fundamentals of Lights and Lasers ebook, and this existed in a traditional printed textbook format earlier, and we developed it interactively. One thing to note is that every image, every figure in it was black and white, so one thing we did was add color, which was huge. And then here's an example of an interactive image about the index of refraction.
Hello, everyone.
And you can see, oops, we just lost iBooks.
I think we've overstayed our welcome, everyone. Thank you very much, everyone, and please, by all means, if you have any questions or would like to communicate with us, feel free to reach out to us. I was going to talk about the future of the student, but we'll save that slide for a future talk. And I think, Mike, you have some things you want to wrap it up with?
I'm sorry, Kelly, it's Mike. We had an internet blink here. The entire building went down, but we're back. No, we're here. I just, our internet went down.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we thought you were you pulled the hook on us for talking too long.
Yes, Mike, can you hear me?
I thought you went on a snack break.
Can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, the internet to our entire building blinked out for about well, I'm glad the thing still worked. No, our entire building went down for 2.5 minutes, so I'm back. Let me launch, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Let me launch the survey while we do some last-minute questions here. So I'd like to take a moment to help us improve our webinar series, and this survey should be up on your screen right now. So Mike, Kelly, Jeanette, we have some time now while the survey is up just to handle any last questions. Jeanette, do you have any?
Actually, we fielded the questions while you were gone, so I think we're okay for right now, unless someone's got a last-minute question.
Okay, that's perfect. While we were finishing the survey here, had you mentioned, while I was off doing whatever I was doing, have you mentioned the high-tech workshop opportunity yet, Jeanette?
No, we have not. So would you like to share that information?
Mike, tell us about that. I can't show it yet. I got to leave this survey up there.
Sure. So in July in Portland, Oregon, so it's going to be a fun time in Portland, Oregon, Kelly and I are going to do a half-day workshop using some of these tools. So we hope to have a room full of Macs and full of excited educators and actually using some of these tools. We'll bring some content that people can use, and then we'll also encourage people to bring their own content so that we can work with them, even in the short time that we have, to take some of their content and build some interactive learning objects from that.
Very cool. Yeah, I've got a slide coming up with that shows that registration link in just a minute as soon as we're done with the survey, Mike.
Right. And Kelly and I are not allowed to fill out the survey, is that correct?
Yeah, don't touch it. Well, I hope you're going to say good things, but.
Oh yeah, we'll say good things. And you know, the really best part, Mike, was when you were off, you missed all of the really the most insightful things that we said.
I see. And how could I just do that?
You'll have to watch
someone has asked.
Okay.
Someone has asked about the slide showing sort of the future of the student and the evolution of the student. So it's in the presentation. So when the presentation gets shared, you'll see a copy of that. But if anybody would like a copy of that or anything else that we talked about today, there's my email address right there. Feel free to email me, and I can share anything that you like.
I like that slide. I'm going to use that in some other context. So I thought that was very interesting. So I want that one too. All right, folks, please finish clicking your survey. I'm going to close it in a few seconds here, and then we'll wrap up for today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So that goes ahead and closes the survey. Thank you for doing that. Next slide, and we're almost done. Here's the connections. Mike just put his email in there. You can see Kelly's is kparr at Brookdale as well. And I'm sure they'll be quite willing to talk to you by email. We're going to be sending a link to this, but you can always find on maytechnetworks.org our webinars, not this one only, but prior ones as well. You could search for this one under eBooks, but we'll send you the link. Upcoming webinars, May 6th, Shift to Competency-Based Education, produced by Polk State College. They've got a very interesting program on their open exit faculty-mentored engineering technology degree. A lot of schools are going towards competency-based, at least exploring that option. By the way, if you'd like a certificate of your attendance today, you can put it up on your wall or do whatever you want with it. You can email Janet Pinhorn. Janet sends all of the reminders, so you'll have her email, and she'll be happy to provide it. Mike and Kelly, you mentioned Portland, Oregon. So the conference itself is there. The workshops are July 27 and 28, and then the conference itself on the 29th and 30th of July. That officially ends our webinar for today. Thank you for attending. Mike, Jeanette, Kelly, certainly appreciate the time and effort you made in this presentation. It was just great. So if you hold on for a second as we wind up today, I'm going to move you into a separate room, and then we can debrief from today. So everyone, that officially concludes our webinar. Thank you again.